Welcome to Archive Whispers, a place to fall asleep. Settle in, lower the lights, and let the archive open. Tonight, a pavilion of pale sandstone stands at the edge of a great slow river, somewhere in northern India, in the warm months when the day's heat finally loosens and the evening comes down soft as ash. The water moves close below the steps, and you can hear it before you can see anything at all. A low, continuous lapping against worn stone, patient and unhurried, the sound a wide river makes when it has nowhere it needs to be. Here on the cool stone of this riverside pavilion, the light is going and the lamps are being lit, and the long quiet of a Mughal night is gathering its sounds one by one. The river working at the steps below, the small wind moving in the garden, a single string instrument carried from somewhere far across the water, and later, the slow voices of the watch counting out the hours until morning. We have only to sit and listen and let each sound arrive in its own time. The river is called the Yamuna, though tonight its name matters less than its presence, which fills everything. It comes down out of the north, broad and brown and slow, and along its eastern bank, for a stretch of some miles, the great families of the empire have built their gardens, one beside the next, each one walled, each one descending in terraces to a riverfront edge where a pavilion sits and watches the water. Ours is one of the smaller ones, and tonight it is quiet. An hour ago the heat still lay on the stone like a hand. Now it lifts, slowly, the way warmth leaves a body, and the first coolness rises off the river and moves up through the garden, carrying the smell of wet earth and waterweed, and faintly, of the jasmine that has been opening along the lower walls. The stone of the pavilion gives back its warmth all night. If you lay your palm flat against it now, it would still be warm, holding the memory of the long afternoon. On the river itself, a few boats are still moving, though they are hard to see now. You hear them more than you see them, the soft knock of a wooden oar against a wooden hull, the small turning splash as it lifts and dips again, a low word passed between two men who have been on the water all day and are bringing the boat home along the bank in the last of the light. The sound carries far over flat water. Then it is gone, downstream, and the river closes over the silence again. Behind us, in the body of the house set further back from the water, the evening is being put in order. A servant moves from niche to niche along the pavilion walls, with a small flame cupped in one hand, and one by one the oil lamps catch and steady, each one a soft coin of amber laid against the grey stone. There is no hurry in it. The lighting of the lamps is a thing done every evening, in the same order, and the doing of it is itself a kind of quiet, the kind that comes from a task worn smooth by long repetition. The lamps are simple things, clay saucers of oil with a twist of cotton wick laid in the lip, and they give a small, honest, wavering light that does not so much push back the dark as keep it gentle company. By such a light the pavilion does not look grand. It looks like a room held in the palm of the night. The carpets dark with their own deep reds, the carved screens throwing soft lattices of shadow, the open arches full of river and sky. This is light to rest by, not light to work by. The pavilion is built of the red and pale stone of this country, and it is made to breathe. Its arches stand open to the river on three sides, so that whatever air moves along the water moves also through the rooms, and on a warm night like this one, the whole building is a kind of sieve for the coolness, gathering it off the river and letting it pass slowly through. The men who built it understood the heat, and built against it not with thick walls but with shade and openness and the nearness of moving water. From the floor of the pavilion, the river is framed and held by the arches like three dark paintings that very slowly change. In the leftmost arch, the water still keeps a little color from the vanished sun, a bruised and fading rose along its far edge. In the middle arch, the first stars have come, small and uncertain, doubled faintly in the moving water below. In the rightmost arch, there is only the deepening blue-black of the coming night, and the pale smear of the opposite bank, where other lamps are beginning too. Across the water, on the far bank, you can just make out the shapes of other gardens, other pavilions, their lamps coming up one by one like a slow answering. The river is wide enough that those distant lights seem to belong to another world, and the small sounds that drift across, a dog somewhere, a snatch of voice, the creak of a well rope being drawn, arrive softened and emptied of meaning, become simply part of the texture of the night, no more demanding of you than the lapping of the water at the steps. Inside the pavilion, the floor is laid for the evening as it is laid every evening. A large carpet is spread across the cool stone, its pattern a garden of its own, winding vines and small stiff flowers worked in deep red and indigo and a faded gold, and along its edges lie the long bolster cushions, firm and round, that one leans against rather than sits upon. There are no chairs. The whole life of the room happens close to the ground, low and reclined, in the posture of a body already half given over to rest. A low wooden stand has been set near one of the arches, and on it a brass tray, and on the tray the small things of the evening, a tall, narrow jug of water cooled in the night air, a few shallow cups, a dish of soaked almonds, a little heap of cardamom pods whose sweet, sharp scent reaches you faintly when the air moves. None of it is touched yet. It waits, the way everything in the pavilion waits, with the patience of objects that have all night before them and nothing they must do. The household that lives here is not a great one, but it is comfortable. The family of a man who holds some middling office in the city's administration, a keeper of records perhaps, or a supervisor of one of the river quays. He is not home yet. He will come later, by boat, when his work is done. The pavilion in the evening belongs to the women and children and servants of the house, and to the slow unwinding of the day's small labors into the larger ease of night. Somewhere behind the pavilion, in the kitchen court, the last of the evening's cooking is being finished, and its smell drifts forward now and then on the moving air. Wood smoke, and warm flatbread off the iron, and the deep round smell of lentils that have been over a low fire since the afternoon, softened with cumin and ginger and a little clarified butter. It is plain food, the food of an ordinary evening, and its smell is one of the oldest comforts there is. The smell that says the day is ending and there will be enough. Out on the river, the light is wholly gone now. What is left is a darkness that is not empty but full of the sound of water which never stops, and which the ear, after a while, stops hearing as a sound at all and begins to hear as the shape of the silence itself. The river is the floor beneath every other sound tonight. Everything else, a voice, a bird, a far-off string plucked and let fall, will rise out of it for a moment and sink back into it, and the river will go on. A thin curtain of pale cotton has been hung across the widest of the arches, more to mark a threshold than to keep anything out, and it stirs now and then when the air off the water pushes against it, lifting a little and falling back, lifting and falling, with the slow rhythm of something breathing in its sleep. The lamplight comes through it softened, and the river beyond it is a moving darkness only half seen, so that the edge of the room and the edge of the night are not quite where you think they are. It is the hour when the day's heat and the day's noise have both drained away, and the night has not yet fully gathered its own sounds, and in that gap there is a great and particular stillness. The birds that cried along the bank at sunset have settled into the trees and gone quiet. The boats have mostly come in. The work of the day is finished, and the deep work of the night, the sleeping, the dreaming, the slow turning of the stars, has not quite begun. We sit in the scene between the two, and listen, and wait for nothing. And then, far off, so faint at first that you are not sure you have heard it at all, comes the first thread of music, a single string, plucked and allowed to ring and fade, then another, slow, from some other pavilion further along the bank where someone cannot yet sleep and has taken up an instrument to keep company with the dark. It is not a performance. It is barely even a tune. It is only a few notes, set down into the night one at a time, the way a person might set down small stones along a path, and the river carries them to us thinned and sweetened by all that water. We will follow that thread of sound, and the river under it, and the slow lamplight, deeper into the night, into the rooms of the pavilion, and the dark of the garden, and the wide sleeping country beyond, where a whole city is lying down along the banks of this same river, under the same few stars. There is nowhere we have to be, and nothing we have to understand. There is only the night, and the water, and the long unhurried hours, and all of it is willing to wait for as long as we care to stay. Let us step in from the open arches now, deeper into the body of the pavilion, where the lamplight is warmer and the sound of the river falls back a little, present still but muffled, like a thing remembered rather than heard. The walls here are thick and cool, inlaid in places with small pieces of colored stone set into the pale ground, a sprig of poppy, a curling leaf, a flower that has no season, and by lamplight these inlays do not gleam so much as glow faintly, holding the warmth the way still water holds the last of the light. In a small carved niche set into the wall, where by day a lamp would not be needed, one burns now, and its flame leans and recovers in the slow breathing of the air. The niche behind it is blackened faintly at the top from 1,000 such evenings, and the soft moving light it throws makes the carved edges of the stone seem to shift, so that the still flowers cut into the wall appear, if you watch them long enough, to stir very slightly, as though a wind we cannot feel were passing through a garden that does not exist. The women of the house have gathered on the carpets near the inner arch, where the river air still reaches but the lamplight is kindest. They are not doing very much. One of them has a length of cloth across her knees and is working at its border with a needle, slowly, more from habit than from any need to finish it tonight. Another leans back against a bolster with her eyes half closed, listening to the talk without joining it. A grandmother sits very upright and very still, as the old often do in the evening, gone somewhere inward. Their talk, when it comes, is low and unhurried and concerns nothing of any weight. A cousin's coming visit, the price of good cloth in the bazaar, whether the well in the second court is running sweet again, a remembered evening from years ago that one of them brings up, and the others take and turn over for a while and set back down. The words are less important than the music of them, the rise and fall of familiar voices in a familiar dark, and a listener half asleep would lose the sense of it long before losing the comfort. A child has been put down to sleep on a folded quilt in the corner furthest from the river draft, and for a while resisted it, as children do, surfacing every few minutes to check that the warmth and the voices were still there before sinking again. Now the small breathing has gone slow and even. One bare foot has worked its way out from under the cover. No one moves to fix it. The night is warm, and there is a particular mercy in not waking a child who has only just, after much effort, agreed to fall asleep. From the kitchen court, the evening meal is carried in at last, on broad brass platters, mounds of rice gone soft and fragrant, lentils thickened to a gold, warm rounds of bread folded in a cloth to keep their heat, a dish of vegetables cooked down with cumin, and a little tamarind until they are nearly sweet. It is set in the middle of the carpet, and the family draws in around it without ceremony. There is the small music of brass and the murmur of an old blessing said quickly under the breath, and then the quiet of people eating who are not in any hurry. When the eating is done, the platters are taken away, and water is brought in a tall jug and poured over hands held above a wide basin, the small clean sound of it cool and welcome in the warm room. A dish of fennel seed and sugar is passed for the sweetening of the mouth, and a faint scent of it lingers. The carpet is brushed clean of crumbs. And slowly, without anyone deciding it, the gathering loosens again into its evening shape, each person drifting back to a cushion, a corner, a private quiet, while the river goes on murmuring beyond the arch. In a side alcove, by the steadiest of the lamps, an older boy of the house has unrolled a book and is bent over it, not reading aloud, only following the lines with his eyes and the faint movement of his lips. The book is a thing of some value, its paper smooth and cream and its margins ruled in faded red, the letters set down by a careful hand in ink gone brown with the years. He reads slowly, the way one reads when there is no examination waiting, simply walking through the words in the lamplight while the house settles around him. The pages turn at long intervals, each one with a soft, dry sound, and between the turnings there is only the lamp's faint hiss and the river. It is an old companionship, this one between a person and a book by a small flame at night, older than this house and older than this empire, and it asks for nothing, no audience, no result, only the willingness to sit still and let the slow lines carry the mind a little way out of itself and the hour. Soon enough, the boy's head will begin to nod, and the book will be gently closed and set aside. Near the river arch, on a low stool, a servant has begun the patient evening work of keeping the lamps. He carries a small, narrow-spouted vessel of oil and goes from flame to flame, lifting each lamp, tilting in a little more oil, easing the charred end of the wick up with a thin iron pin so that it burns clean and tall again. It is unhurried, careful work, and it must be done through the night, for an unwatched lamp will gutter and smoke and die, and the dark would come in where it had been. There is a smell to the lamps that belongs entirely to the night, the warm, faintly nutty smell of the oil, and under it the thread of smoke, and under that the hot, clean smell of the stone itself, warmed by the day and warmed again by the flames. It is a smell that the people of this house would know anywhere, the smell of their own evenings, and a child raised here will carry it for the rest of a life and feel, whenever it returns by accident in some far place and year, a sudden unaccountable ease, a sense of having come back to a safe and lamplit dark. Along one wall stands a tall, narrow chest of dark wood, its front worked with small panels of inlaid bone and brass, and within it are kept the better things of the house, a few lengths of fine cloth folded away in muslin, a string of amber beads, a sealed letter or two, a small box of coins. By day it is opened and closed with the ordinary carelessness of use. By night, shut and dim in the corner, it takes on a kind of dignity, a quiet keeping, like a sleeping animal that holds the household's small treasures safe inside its dark. The grandmother who sat so upright has at last let herself be persuaded to lie back, and a light cover has been drawn over her, and a younger woman sits near her for a while, not speaking, only present, in the old wordless arrangement by which the watched over and the watcher trade places across a life. The lamp by them is turned low. The river breathes in through the arch. There is a great gentleness in the room now, the particular gentleness of a household where everyone has been fed and no one is afraid, and the night is understood to be a safe one. Outside, the level of the night has risen another notch. The last of the cooking smoke has cleared from the air, and what comes in through the arches now is cool and clean, and smells only of the river and the garden, of wet stone and green water, and the jasmine still opening below. The thin curtain lifts and falls. The lamps lean and recover. And somewhere out across the dark water the single string is still being touched, now and again, by the unseen player who cannot sleep, the slow notes coming and going beneath everything like the pulse of the night itself. One by one, the people of the house are giving themselves over to sleep, not all at once and not by any signal, but the way a fire settles, each in its own time sinking a little lower. The needle has been set aside with its half-worked border. The book is closed. The talk has thinned to a word now and then to nothing. Only the lamp-keeper stays fully awake, moving softly among the flames, and far off the player at the strings, and the river, which was awake before any of them and will be awake long after. We will leave them to it, and go back out through the arches to the open edge of the pavilion, where the river is loud again and the night is wide. The house behind us is quieter now than when we came in, dimmer, sunk a little deeper toward sleep. Ahead and below and all around there is the dark, and the water, and the great patient business of the night, which is only beginning, and into which we will now go more slowly still, listening for the sounds by which a Mughal night measured out its hours. A night like this one is not a single undivided dark. It is measured, divided into watches, into portions the people of this country call pahars, each one some 3 hours long, 4 of them laid end to end between the falling of the dark and the coming of the light. And the passing of these watches is not left to be guessed at. It is announced, marked, sounded out over the sleeping houses, so that even those lying awake in the dark can know without rising how far the night has gone and how much of it remains. Somewhere not far off, in a small chamber given over to the keeping of the time, sits a man whose whole night's work is the measuring of it. Before him is a wide vessel of water, and floating in it a small bowl of thin beaten copper, pierced at its base with a single tiny hole. Slowly, slowly, the water finds its way in through that hole, and the little bowl, which floated high at the start, sinks lower and lower as the minutes gather inside it, until at last it fills and goes under, and a measure of time has passed that can be seen and counted and known. Each time the little copper bowl sinks, the timekeeper lifts a small mallet and strikes a hanging disc of bronze. Once, a single clear stroke that rings out into the night and hangs there a long moment before it fades. He keeps the count on his fingers, or with a knotted cord, and at the end of each watch he strikes a longer figure, the number of the watch now ending, so that the bronze speaks not only the minutes but the larger shape of the night, telling the dark how old it has grown. When the stroke of the bronze comes across the water to the pavilion, it arrives gentled by distance, less a sound than the memory of one, a soft round note that seems to rise out of the river and sink back into it. Those who are awake hear it and know the hour. Those who are asleep do not wake, but perhaps somewhere below their sleeping it registers all the same, a marker laid quietly down, so that they will turn in the night and feel, without knowing why that time is passing as it should, that all is being counted, that nothing has been forgotten in the dark. There is another voice in the night besides the bronze, and this one is human, and walks. The watchman of the quarter goes his slow round through the dark lanes behind the gardens, a staff in one hand and a small lantern in the other, and as he goes he calls out now and then, in a long carrying cry, that all is well, that he is awake and watching, that the sleepers may go on sleeping. His call is half warning and half comfort, a sound shaped by years of repetition into something almost like a song, rising at the lane's mouths and dying away as he turns the corner. The pavilion stands a little apart from the lanes, down toward the water, and so the watchman's cry reaches it thinned and far, one more sound folded into the layered quiet of the night, the river beneath everything, the far bronze marking the watches, the nearer rustle of the garden, the occasional distant string, and now and then this lonely walking voice, declaring the dark to be safe. None of these sounds demands anything of the listener. Together they make a kind of fabric, loosely woven, with the silence showing through, and a person could lie inside that fabric for hours and feel only held. The string we have heard on and off all evening grows a little clearer now, as though the unseen player, deep in the night and alone with the instrument, has settled into it more fully. It is a long-necked thing, plucked and droning, the kind of instrument on which a single note can be made to bend and waver and slowly find its place. And what comes from it is not a song with a beginning and an end, but a slow unspooling. A few phrases turned over and over, each time a little different, the way a person turns a worry or a memory in the quiet of a sleepless night. Music in this country is not measured out in the brisk equal beats of a march. It moves in long breaths, in slow gathering shapes that may take an hour to unfold, built to suit the mood of a particular time of the day or night. For there are melodies that belong to the dawn, and melodies that belong to the deep of the dark. And a thoughtful player would no more sound a morning phrase at midnight than a person would throw open the shutters at the wrong hour. What drifts to us now is a melody of the late night, grave and slow and a little sorrowful, exactly suited to this lamplit dark. On the river a single late boat passes, going downstream with the current and needing little rowing, and for a while its small sounds come and go, the creak of timber, the slap of water against the hull, a low cough, the soft drag of a rope. A faint lantern hangs at its prow and lays a long wavering line of light across the black water toward us, And then the boat moves on past the garden, and the line of light swings away and narrows and is gone, and the river closes behind it as though it had never been, keeping no record of anything that crosses it. After the boat has gone, the silence seems for a moment deeper than before. The way a room seems darker the instant a lamp is carried out of it. But it is not really silence. It is only the river again, the patient lapping at the steps. And once the ear has let go of the boat, it sinks back gratefully into that older sound, which asks nothing and changes never and has been going on. Just so, since long before there was anyone on these banks to hear it, and will go on just so, long after. The garden behind the pavilion has its own small night sounds, and they reach us when the river quiets. There is the steady, thin singing of insects in the warm dark, thousands of them, so constant that it becomes a kind of silence of its own. There is the occasional dry rustle of some small creature moving through the fallen leaves under the hedges. And there is the soft, endless trickle of water in the garden channels, where the river is led inland along narrow stone runs to feed the beds and fill the tanks, so that even far from the bank you are never out of earshot of moving water. The master of the house comes home at last, late by water, as he said he would. We hear his boat before we see it, the rhythm of the oars changing as it turns in toward the garden steps, a quiet word to the boatman, the bump and scrape of the hull against stone. He climbs the steps slowly, tired from the long day of figures and Ks and the small endless frictions of office, and a servant meets him at the top with a lamp, and the two of them go up through the dark garden toward the house without many words. The lamp swinging, throwing its small moving light across the path. He does not wake the house. A little food has been kept warm for him and is brought out quietly, and he eats it alone on the edge of the pavilion, looking out at the river, letting the day fall away from him. The water and the lamplight and the far slow string do their old work on a tired man, smoothing and loosening, and by the time the dish is empty he is no longer thinking of the keys at all, only sitting, only breathing, only watching the dark water go by, the way a person does at the end of a long day, when at last there is nothing more that must be done. Far off, the bronze sounds again, a longer figure this time. Several strokes spaced slow and even, and the man on the pavilion edge counts them without meaning to, and knows that the second watch of the night has ended and the third begun. It is the deep middle of the night now, the part that belongs to no one, too late for the evening and too early for the dawn, the hour when the wakeful are very wakeful and the sleeping are very deep, when the world is at its stillest and the river seems to run quieter, as though it too were keeping its voice down so as not to disturb the sleep of so many. The tired man rises at last and goes in, and the lamp he carried is set in its niche, and the edge of the pavilion is left empty to the river and the night. Now there is no one awake in the whole house, but the lamp-keeper at his patient round, and even he moves slower now, and pauses longer between the lamps, and sometimes stands quite still for a while, with the oil vessel in his hand, looking out at the water, half dreaming on his feet, before he remembers himself and goes on to the next small flame that needs him. Across the water the lone musician has stopped at last. The final note was let fall some while ago and not taken up again, and only now do we notice the absence of it, the way one notices, after a long time, that some small steady sound which had kept us company all evening, a dripping eave, a turning wheel, has quietly ceased. The player has set the instrument aside and gone, perhaps to sleep at last. The night's restlessness eased out of the fingers and into the strings, and from the strings into the dark, where it has dispersed and gone quiet. One more small light goes out along the far bank, and so the layered sounds of the early night thin out, one by one, the way the lamps are thinning along the banks. The boats have stopped, the music has ended, the watchman has gone to the far side of his round, and his cry no longer reaches us. What is left, in the deep middle of the night, is only the two oldest sounds of this place. The river, going by, and now and then, far off, the single slow stroke of the bronze, measuring the dark, and between the two of them, they hold the whole sleeping world, and ask it for nothing, and let it rest. We will stay a while longer in this deep part of the night, and let it work on us as it works on the tired man and the dreaming lamp keeper and the sleeping house. There is a great deal of night still to come, and no reason to hurry through any of it. The river will keep its slow time. The bronze will mark the watches. And we will sit here in the warm dark, doing nothing, needing nothing, while the stars wheel very slowly over the water and the whole long patient night carries us, unhurried, toward a morning that is still hours and hours away. Let us walk back now, slowly, away from the water's edge and up into the garden that lies between the pavilion and the house, for it too is part of this night and has its own quiet to offer. It is a garden built to a plan as old as paradise itself, a great square, divided and divided again by straight stone channels of running water into 4 equal parts, and those 4 into 4, so that the whole is a pattern of green squares laid out around the crossing of the waters, ordered and calm and meant, even in the dark, to be a small image of a perfect and peaceful world. Where the 4 great channels meet, at the very heart of the garden, there is a wide, shallow tank of pale stone, and in its center a low fountain, and from the fountain the water rises only a hand's height and falls back, rises and falls back, in a soft, continual murmur that is the gentlest sound in all the garden. By day, in the sun, the falling water flashes and dazzles. By night it is invisible, only heard, a cool plashing in the dark, and the smell of it, wet stone, green water, hangs over the whole center of the garden like a thin veil one walks through. The flowers of a garden like this are chosen as much for the evening as for the day, and many of them save their strongest scent for the dark, holding it back through the bright hours and releasing it only now, when the heat has gone and the air is still and there is no sun to burn it away. So the night garden is, above all, a garden of smells, and to walk its paths in the dark is to pass through one invisible room of fragrance after another. Here the heavy sweetness of jasmine along a wall, there the cooler scent of some pale night flower, and everywhere, under all of it, the green wet smell of the running water. Along the central path, set at intervals, grow the great dark shapes of the cypress trees, tall and narrow and almost black against the deep blue of the night sky. And between them, the broader rounded crowns of fruit trees, mango and citron and pomegranate, heavy and still. The cypress, the gardeners of this country say, stands for eternity, being always green, and the fruit tree for the turning life of the year, being green and then bare, and then green again, and the two are planted together on purpose, the changeless beside the changing, so that the garden holds both at once. The air here, away from the river and held among the trees and walls, is very still, and warm still from the day, and in it the small night-flying insects drift and turn. Among them, now and then, a firefly lifts and floats, its small, cold green light kindling and fading, with no pattern one can follow, drifting low over the dark beds and the still water of the channels. A child kept up too late might chase them, but there is no child awake now, and the fireflies have the garden to themselves, lighting and going dark, like slow, soft thoughts. The water that runs through all these channels is the river's own water, lifted from the Yamuna and led inland and up, by means of wheels and oxen, and the long patient labor of the day, into a high tank, from which it is let down again, to flow through the garden by the simple pull of its own weight. So the river is here too, in the heart of the garden, far from its bank, the same water, only quieted and narrowed and made to run in straight stone lines among the flowers, doing slowly and gently the work of keeping all this green alive in a hot and thirsty land. A low stone bench sits at the meeting of two paths, worn smooth by long sitting, and we might rest on it a while. The stone has kept a little of the day's warmth, and gives it up slowly into the backs of the legs, a small animal comfort in the cool of the night. From here the whole garden lies around us in the dark, ordered and breathing, the black spires of the cypress, the soft mass of the fruit trees, the pale lines of the channels catching what little light there is, and the central fountain murmuring on, faithfully, to no one, in the middle of it all. The scent of the jasmine is strongest here, where it has been let climb a whole length of the eastern wall. And at this hour it is almost too much, a thick, sweet weight on the still air that seems to gather in the hollows of the garden and pool there. It is the smell, above all others, of a warm night in this country, the smell that will reach into a sleeper's dreams through an open arch and color them, the smell that those born here will spend the rest of their lives half searching for, and finding, now and then, on some far summer night, with a pang they cannot name. Now and then a single ripe fruit, loosened by the day's heat, lets go somewhere in the dark above and falls, a soft heavy thud onto the earth of a bed, a small private event that no one sees, the tree quietly giving up one of its own in the night. The sound is round and final and oddly satisfying, and then the silence comes back over it, and the fruit lies where it fell, and will be found in the morning, or by some animal before the morning, and either way it is no concern of ours. We only note the sound, and let it pass. A faint air begins to move through the garden, the first stirring in a long while, coming up off the river and finding its way among the trees. And as it passes it lifts the scent and shifts it, carrying the jasmine away from the wall and out across the beds, mixing it with the green smell of the water and the dry smell of the warm stone paths. The cypresses sway very slightly, their black tops leaning and returning against the stars. The leaves of the fruit trees turn and whisper for a moment. Then the air settles again, and the garden goes still, and the scent comes slowly back to where it was. The garden was made, in the end, to be a kind of rest for the mind, not a wild place but a quieted one, where everything has been brought into order and proportion. The water made to run straight, the trees set in their rows, the whole confusion of growing things gathered into a calm and walkable pattern. And there is a deep ease in that order, especially at night, especially to a tired person, the ease of being in a place where someone long ago took great care that things should be peaceful, and where that care still holds, still works, still soothes, generation after generation, in the dark. Near the wall, a small stone shelter stands over the head of one of the channels, and within it the water enters the garden, sliding out from a dark mouth in the stone and spreading into the run with a low, even gurgle that never stops. A gardener sleeps not far off, on a string cot under the open sky, for in the warm months, the work of the garden begins before dawn, and it is easier to sleep among the beds than to walk out from the town each morning. He sleeps deeply, used to the sounds, and the water talks on beside him all night long, and he does not hear it, and it keeps him company all the same. Above the garden the sky is enormous and very clear, the stars thick from edge to edge, for there is little to dim them in this age, no glare thrown up from the sleeping town, only the small honest flames of the lamps, which do not reach the sky. The old patterns hang where they have always hung, the ones the people of this land have watched and named and steered their boats and timed their planting by for longer than anyone can say, and they wheel now, slowly over the garden and the river and the dark, in the great unhurried turning that measures out the deepest hours of the night. We could stay in the garden until morning, and some part of us would like to, but the night is not finished with its rooms to show us, and so we will rise from the warm bench and walk back, slowly, the way we came, down through the dark ordered beds toward the river and the pavilion, and the wide world beyond the wall. The fountain murmurs behind us, growing fainter. The jasmine releases us from its weight. The fireflies kindle and fade among the beds, paying us no notice, keeping their slow, soundless watch over the sleeping green long after we have gone. At the lower edge of the garden, where it gives way again to the stone of the pavilion terrace, we come back within full hearing of the river, and its broad, steady voice rises to meet us, swallowing the small sounds of the garden behind. It is good to come back to it. After the close, sweet rooms of the garden, the river is wide and cool and plain, and asks nothing, and gives everything its old simple measure. The lamps of the pavilion are lower now, burned down through the long hours, but they are still there, still warm, still waiting, small and faithful in the dark. We will pause here, at the edge of the water, between the sleeping garden and the sleeping river, and let ourselves grow as quiet inside as everything around us has become. The night is well past its middle now and sliding, slowly, down the long far slope toward the morning, though the morning is still a great while off and need not be thought of yet. For now there is only this, the river, the lamps, the warm stone, the wide soft dark, and the simple sufficient fact of being here, awake and at peace, in the deep still heart of a Mughal night. Let us lift our eyes now from our own small pavilion, and let them travel out, along the river, in both directions, into the great sleeping breadth of the night. Our garden is only one of many. Up and down this bank, for miles, the riverfront gardens stand side by side, each behind its wall, each with its terraces and its channels and its pavilion at the water. And tonight all of them are doing what ours is doing, keeping their lamps, holding their sleepers, listening to the same river, so that the whole long shore is a row of quiet lighted rooms strung out above the dark water. Behind the gardens, set back from the cool of the river, lies the great city itself, and it too is sleeping. Its lanes run dark and narrow between close-packed houses of brick and mud and stone, and over its flat roofs, where in the warm months whole families carry their cots up to sleep under the open sky. There lie now thousands upon thousands of sleepers, side by side across the rooftops, breathing in the dark, turning in their dreams, the whole vast population of the place laid out beneath the same stars, given over, for these few hours, to the long democracy of sleep. The great bazaar, that by day is the loudest place in the world, a roar of voices and hooves and hammering, and the cries of 100 trades, lies now utterly silent, its lanes shuttered, its stalls covered, its goods folded away behind drawn cloths and barred wooden doors. A single dog trots down the empty central way and disappears. A cat sits washing on a shuttered counter. The smell of the day still hangs in the air. Spices, leather, smoke, dung, the worn breath of 1,000 transactions, but the noise that went with it has drained entirely away, leaving the great market as quiet as a dry riverbed. Down at the river quays, where by day the boats crowd in and the porters run with their loads, the work has long since ended, and the boats lie moored in rows, rocking very gently against one another and against the stone, with a soft, irregular knocking of hull on hull that goes on all night. On many of them the boatmen sleep aboard, rolled in a blanket in the well of the boat, or stretched along a thwart, rocked by the same water they work, near their livelihood, near the river that is the whole of their world, and they sleep, most likely, better than the rich men in the great houses up the bank. Here and there about the sleeping city a few lights still burn, each one a small story of its own. A baker has risen already in the dark to start his ovens against the dawn, and a low red glow shows at his door, and the first smell of heating clay and wood smoke begins to thread the empty lanes. A sick child somewhere keeps a mother awake, and a single lamp burns steady in an upper window through all the long hours. A traveler newly arrived sits up in a serai courtyard, unable to sleep in a strange place, watching the stars wheel over an unfamiliar roofline. But these waking lights are few, scattered points in a great dark field of sleep. And from far off, from out on the river looking back, the whole city seems to lie quiet under its blanket of stars, breathing slowly, all its noise and trade and striving folded away for a while into stillness. It is a strange and moving thing to think of. So many lives, so many hopes and fears and small daily struggles, all of them set down together each night, all at once by the common and merciful necessity of rest, and taken up again all at once with the coming of the light. Beyond the city the river runs on, out into the open country, past villages we cannot see, past fields of grain standing pale under the stars, past groves and ponds and the dark shapes of single trees in the middle of empty land, and everywhere along it the same night lies, the same stars, the same slow water. The river does not belong to the city. The city has only gathered itself along the river's bank, the way a traveler sits down beside a road. The water came long before the houses and will outlast them, going down to the sea as it has always gone, through the dark, indifferent and serene. Somewhere far out in that dark country, a village keeps its own small night, a cluster of mud houses around a pond, a few cattle standing asleep on their feet in a fold, a watchman with a stick and a smoldering cord of rope to keep the embers of his little fire. The same stars hang over him as over the great houses of the riverfront, and the same hours pass, marked there not by bronze and water clocks, but by the slow swing of the constellations and the first far crowing of a cock long before the dawn. The night is one night, and it covers everything, the city and the field alike. It is good sometimes, in the deep of a sleepless night, to let the mind travel out like this, away from the small circle of one's own lamp, and to feel how wide the dark is, and how full of others awake and others sleeping, others tending fires and others rocking in boats, others sitting up with the sick, and others walking the lanes with a staff and a lantern. All of us scattered across the same enormous night, each in our own small pool of warmth. None of us alone in quite the way we feared. All of us carried together through the dark toward the same far morning. Far off, the bronze sounds once more, faint and round across the water, marking the turn of another watch, and the count of it tells us that the third watch has ended and the last begun. The deepest part of the night is behind us now, though the dark is still complete and the morning gives no sign. From here the night begins its long, slow lean toward the day, imperceptibly at first, nothing you could point to, only a sense, somewhere below thought, that the great wheel has passed its lowest point and started, very gradually, to climb. We come back now, gently, from our long looking out, back across the dark country and the sleeping city and the row of silent gardens, back to our own small pavilion at the water's edge, where the lamps still burn low and the river still laps at the steps, and nothing at all has changed in our absence. It is a quiet relief to return, the way it always is to come back to one's own small lighted place after looking too long into the great dark. The pavilion seems even kinder now, even warmer, for having been left and found again. The lamp keeper has nearly finished his long night. Most of the lamps he tends are very low now, the oil far down in the dishes, the flames small and blue at the root, and he no longer trims them so much as simply watches them, letting them burn down toward their natural end. For the dark is no longer something to be held back at all costs. The dawn is coming in its own time, and a flame allowed to gutter out near morning has only done, a little early, what the morning would do for it anyway. He sits and watches and waits, as we do. The river, which has not changed its voice all night, seems to us now, in the long quiet, to be saying something, though it is not, of course, saying anything at all. It is only water, moving over its bed as water moves, lapping the stone as it has lapped it for 10,000 years. But the tired mind in the late watches makes meanings where it can, and finds in the steady patient sound of the river a kind of reassurance, a sense that something old and large and untroubled is keeping watch over the small troubled span of a single human night, and means it no harm, and will see it safely through to morning. Inside the pavilion the sleepers have not stirred. The child still sleeps with one foot loose from the cover. The grandmother sleeps, and the woman who watched her sleeps now too, fallen quiet beside her at last. The master of the house sleeps the heavy sleep of the truly tired, and somewhere the older boy sleeps with his book still near his hand. The whole house is sunk into the deepest stillness of the night, the hour before dawn, when sleep is at its weight and the body is furthest down in its long nightly repair. And we who have wandered the house and the garden and the river and the wide sleeping land, and listened to the bronze and the watchman and the slow far string, and watched the lamps lit and the lamps burned down, we too are growing heavy now, settled deep into the warm stone and the sound of the water. Our thoughts gone slow and soft and loosely strung, drifting where they like, no longer quite ours to direct. The night has done to us what it does to everyone it is allowed to keep long enough. It has worn us gently down towards sleep. There is one more part of the night to pass, the last and slowest and softest of all, the long shallowing stretch between the deep of the dark and the first gray hint of the day, and we will pass it here on the warm stone, by the low lamps, with the river going on below us, asking nothing, letting go of the hours one by one. We need not stay awake for it. There is nothing to see, nothing to mark, nothing that requires us. If sleep comes, let it come. The river will keep watch, the night will hold, and the morning, when it comes, will come gently and on its own. And so we come to the last and quietest part of the night, the long, soft hours that have no name, when there is nothing left to do but rest, and let the river carry the time away. The lamp nearest us leans and recovers and leans again, in the slow breathing of the air, just as it did at the start of the evening, hours and hours ago now, as though the whole long night had been only a single slow breath of this one small flame. Lean and recover. Lean and recover. There is no hurry in it at all. The river goes by. That is the whole of it. Now, the one steady fact beneath everything, the river going by in the dark, lapping the worn stone of the steps, patient, unhurried, going down through the sleeping land, toward a sea it will not reach for many days, carrying the night away on its back a little at a time. The river goes by. It went by before we came, and it will go by after we have gone. And there is a great comfort, at this hour, in being for a little while beside something so old and so calm, and so entirely untroubled by anything at all. Far off, very faint now, the bronze sounds once, a single soft stroke, and we no longer trouble to count it. It is enough to know that the night is being kept, that somewhere a patient hand is still marking the watches, that time is passing as it should, and all is in order. The sound comes across the water, round and gentle, and sinks into the river, and is gone. The watches will go on being struck whether we attend to them or not. We may let go of the counting now. We may let go of a great many things now. The jasmine on the garden wall has spent the last of its scent into the night, and the air now is only cool and clean and faintly green, the plain good smell of the river and the wet stone. The fireflies have mostly settled. The insects have thinned their long singing to a few. One by one, all through the night, the sounds have been laying themselves down, the way the people of the house lay themselves down, until what is left is very little, very soft, very near to silence, but not quite silence, never quite silence. For always there is the river, always there is the river. Let that be the thought to rest on, if a thought is needed at all, the river, going by in the dark, steady and soft and endless, the oldest sound in this place and the last to fall silent, which is to say never silent at all. Whatever else lets go tonight, the river will not let go. It will be there beneath your sleeping as it is beneath your waking, lapping the stone, going down toward the sea, carrying the long night gently away, hour by hour until the morning. Always, beneath everything, there is the river. The lamp leans and recovers. The river goes by. Somewhere a sleeper turns and settles deeper. The warm stone holds the last of the day's heat against the cool of the coming morning, and gives it up so slowly that it will not be gone until the sun itself returns to replace it. Nothing here is in any hurry. Nothing here needs anything from you. You may lie back against the bolster and close your eyes, or leave them open on the dark river, as you like. Either way, the night will go on holding you, soft and slow, the way it has held everyone who has ever rested on this stone. If you sleep, you will not miss anything. The morning will come whether you watch for it or not, and it will come slowly, the dark thinning by degrees so small that no single moment can be called the change, the stars going faint one by one, a paleness gathering in the east over the far bank, the river turning from black to gray to a soft and pearly silver. None of it needs an audience. It has happened every morning over this river since long before there were any pavilions on its banks. And it will happen this morning too, in its own quiet time, with you asleep or waking, and ask nothing of you either way. The lamp by us has burned very low now, the oil almost gone, the flame small and quiet and blue at its root, and it will not last much longer. We will not trim it. Let it burn down to its end in its own time, the way the night is burning down to its end, gently, without struggle, the small flame and the great dark both sinking together toward the morning that will make them both unnecessary. There is a kind of peace in watching a thing come softly to its close, knowing that nothing is lost, that the light it gave was given, and that the dawn is on its way. The river goes by, the lamp leans, lower now, and recovers, barely. Somewhere far off, a first bird, mistaking the faint paleness for the day, tries a single note and thinks better of it and falls silent again. It is not time yet. The cool of the small hours has settled fully over the garden and the stone, and the warm month's night is at its kindest now, soft and gray and still, the heat all gone and the heat of the day not yet begun, the one cool hinge of the whole turning day. Rest in it. There will not be a quieter hour than this one. We have come a long way through this night together, from the first cool lifting of the heat to the last gray hush before the morning, and it is nearly time to let it go. There is nothing to take away from it and nothing to remember. It was only a night, like the thousands of nights this river has poured past these steps, and its whole gift was simply that it passed, slowly and gently and without harm, and let us pass through it at rest. That is enough. That is, perhaps, the most that any night can give, and this one has given it freely. So let your eyes close now, if they have not closed already. The lamp will burn down on its own. The river will keep its long, patient time. The watch will be struck, far off, and need not be counted. The sleepers in the house will sleep on, and you may join them, sinking down through the warm dark the way the little copper bowl sinks through the still water, slowly, slowly, until at last you go gently under, and the night closes softly over you, and holds you, and carries you on. The river goes by. The lamp leans, and is still. The warm stone holds you, the night holds you. Far off and very soft, the water keeps its old slow word against the steps, the same word it has said all night, the same word it said before you came, and will say after you have gone, asking nothing, meaning nothing, only going on, and on, and on. Gentle and endless and dark, beneath the fading stars, toward a morning that is still a long, soft, unhurried while away. There is nothing more to tell, and nothing more that needs telling. The night will see itself out. The gray will come, and then the pearl, and then the first gold along the river, and the lamps will be quietly put out, and the house will stir, and the long ordinary day will begin again, as it always does, as it always has. But that is hours away yet, and none of our concern, and we need not wait for it. We have had the night, the whole long gift of it, and now we may set it down softly and rest. Sleep now, if you are still here at all. The river goes by, the lamp is low, the stone is warm, the night is long and soft and kind, and it is in no hurry, and neither now are you. Let it carry you. Let the water keep its word against the steps. Let the dark hold you, gently, the way it has held this quiet pavilion and this sleeping house, and this whole long sleeping land, all through these slow hours, beneath these fading stars, beside this old and patient river, on a still night, on a still night, on a still and endless night. Rest now. The river will keep watch. The night will hold. And the morning, when it comes, will come gently and on its own. This has been a still night at a riverside pavilion, beside a great slow river, long ago, under the same stars that are above you now. Sleep well. The water goes on. The water goes on. The water goes on.
You've reached the end of tonight's archive. If you're still awake, thank you for staying. And if you drifted off somewhere in the dark, then it did its work. Rest now. The next chapter will be here when you are. Sleep well. This has been Archive Whispers.